Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. When it comes to the season 4 update, we were primarily focused on the weapon tuning changes, right? Because there was a ton of them. Rifles, SMGs, snipers, all sorts of stuff saw buffs and nerfs. Something else that also saw a lot of changes though was a few specific attachment categories, primarily the underbarrels and the rear grips. And I was actually able to sit in on a call with Raven prior to season 4 going live, where the devs talked about wanting to open up some attachment diversity so that not every single setup was hand stop and polymer on absolutely everything, right? So today we're focusing on this new attachment meta, if you will, and the big changes that we saw to quite a few different options. As we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, every single day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, so feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. Also, you might be wondering, Zach, what do you got here? Well, this just so happens to be a part of the brand new spring collection from Scuff. This is obviously a PlayStation 5 Reflex version of it. But yeah, Scuff just dropped a brand new collection full of a bunch of new colorways. This one super clean. We got like the blue, the white. I love how it looks. It's honestly like probably one of my favorite designs I've seen. They also have a ton of other customizable designs on the site right now for Xbox, for PlayStation, you name it, they got you covered. And if you ever want to get a controller for yourself, COD WARZONE has you covered with a nice little discount. So real quick, when we look at the patch notes here, we can see attachments updated most universal attachments to bring more options to players. Those universal attachments is referencing primarily the hand stop and the polymer grip. Those were the two that were referenced in our call with Raven, where they said, yeah, we don't want every single setup to just be this attachment, this barrel, this stock, hand stop, polymer, a magazine, because it was just too boring, too basic. So they made some changes to the muzzles. Honestly, we're not really too focused on this. MX silencer is still the way to go for long range, and recoil booster is still the way to go for close range. But what's really important is the underbarrels and then also the rear grips, as I mentioned. So bayonet, that's not really a meta choice. We're never going to really be using that on anything. The pistol grip though, the ADS time was decreased a little bit and the movement speed was increased. So now for a movement based build, the pistol grip going to be a more viable option. The steady grip, this is a big one. The gun movement while firing was decreased a little bit, hip fire was increased, and it now offers control benefits as well. Only 2% for vertical and horizontal, but still that is some added control that was not previously there. Skeletal saw another big change. The movement speed was also increased here, just by 1%, but that's something that's going to drastically impact a setup in certain ways if you're stacking certain attachments. The ready grip had a vertical recoil decrease, so that's going to be a little bit less effective, in the bipod change as well. That's not too important. Primarily the big changes here: pistol grip, steady grip, skeletal under barrel as well. So those three we're gonna obviously look at in game and talk about more in just a second, but some important changes there to help these compete with hand stop. Rear grips, for whatever reason, when they said they didn't want players to use polymer, they went ahead and nerfed the flinch resistance and not the control that was added with it. I think the reason everyone uses polymer is because it gives you better control during sustained fire. The flinch resistance is not really a huge benefit that most players are, you know, seeking out, right? So that's kind of a strange nerf in my opinion. But hatch grip, this is pretty important. Better vertical control, more horizontal control from before, and also it increases the flinch because it's obviously very important, right? For rubber grip, better flinch resistance. Again, that's not really super relevant. Leather grip is pretty important here though. Better hip spread, and then also ADS move speed, so you get the really fast strafe speed. That's going to be a very important one for certain builds. Granular, not really anything too crazy there, but then taped, another big one. Movement speed, overall movement speed, now increased to 5%. And obviously, as we saw with the launch of the season, this is a little bit bugged. This is not supposed to stack on top of all these other movement attachments, but because it can, it gives you that broken move speed that we talked about over the weekend. I don't anticipate that staying, but this should be a movement speed benefit that we see fully fixed and in place here, I would imagine, in the coming days. Also, sprint to fire is better, so it's making aggressive builds better as well. So clearly there are some significant updates that we saw here, but how does that actually compete to the clear and obvious meta choices from before in game? Well, if we jump in game, this is what a standard SMG loadout would have looked like prior to the season 4 update. And for what it's worth, pretty much all these attachment changes that we're talking about here today revolve around the close range meta and pretty much just SMGs. I wonder if we're going to see some big changes to rifles. Obviously, they're trying to get away from hand stop only on rifles and like polymer, but for long range, those do make a lot of sense. Carver's obviously in there a little bit, sometimes hatched is as well, but this is mainly relating to close range because, as you can see, this was a pretty standard setup where hand stop was the go-to because it gave you that better vertical and horizontal control. But now, when we go ahead and we look at things, if you wanted to build a movement-based build here, you'd be running something like the skeletal underbarrel, which is going to obviously increase your movement speed a little bit and help out with that ADS speed. You'd have whatever barrel you want to use on the Blixen here, which gives you better aim walking movement speed. That's going to give you a faster strafe speed, so you could run something like that. Then you change a stock over to something like the skeletal, which gives you better movement speed as well, and you're gonna be able to run around incredibly fast even when all the speed attachments are fixed and not stacking, and instead they're doing what they're supposed to do, like with all the other attachments like control and range attachments do now. On top of that, you'd also have a rear grip here, which you can end up updating, and you could throw in something like fabric, which is going to give you that better ADS and better sprint to fire, but it'll hurt your horizontal control a little bit, you know. However, we also have things like hatched, which now if you struggle with control on a build, let's say you wanted to have some decent mobility but also have some good control in general, this is going to help out there now, especially with horizontal. So weapons like the Blixen here, which past like 25 bullets has a really weird horizontal bounce, or the Type 100, which has a lot of bounce, this is going to help out even more than before. Leather for a faster ADS and a better strafe speed, again, you could throw that on, and this build in particular would have a ridiculous ADS strafe speed, and you'd be able to aim down sights and move left and right like you were walking around normally, which would be really, really good. Taped, though, also offers another huge benefit as well, with that plus movement speed and plus sprint to fire, where you could have this and your general movement speed when you're running around rotating trying to get from point A to point B is going to be way faster than ever before. Obviously not as fast as when it's all broken right now, but faster than we've ever seen in Warzone. So essentially what they're doing here is, instead of having our basic meta setup here that we had before, where it's basically focusing on TTK and maintaining good control because of that, because obviously when you have barrels like the RMK and a magazine that's going to bounce a little bit, you're going to have to land shots more consistently to have that optimal TTK. So you need to use things like hand stop, like polymers, so on and so forth. Instead of having this one sort of stationary and sort of slower movement based meta build, you now have several options. You could go for something like this big meta loadout here that has worked just fine up until this point, and it still does work now. But also, if you want to be more of a finesse player and have ridiculously good movement on a setup that maybe doesn't have an incredible TTK, but you can get around enemies, you can flank them easier, you can bob left and right in a gunfight and try and throw off their aim, so you're just going to land more shots than them in a certain period of time, you have the option now to go in and build out movement-based build, which obviously I just had as an example here, on any of the subs. You can do the same on the Marco 5, on the Sten, on the Armaguerra. It does not matter. You now have, instead of just this one basic meta loadout for a lot of these weapons, you have several different meta loadouts based on how you want to play. Go all out on TTK, go all out on control, go all in on movement. You got a lot of options, which, while the Vanguard meta is kind of boring because it's all Vanguard guns right now, it seems, I do like the fact that we have several different options here for what setups we want to use. That said, that essentially sums up the big attachment changes and meta changes that we saw with the Season 4 update that maybe slipped under the radar. That's going to wrap things up for this one, though. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with everything going on in COD. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.